Well, I was born and raised in a farm about 30 miles out of Pittsburgh. It was in Saxonburg, Pennsylvania. And I remember growing up from the time, well, I would say I was probably about 6 years old. And I went to a country school. We had one teacher to 42 students approximately each year. We had about 42 students, and she taught all the way from first grade through 8th. She lived in Butler, so there were some days that she had a hard time getting into Saxonburg. Saxonburg was about 12 miles out of Butler, and there was many mornings that our teacher didn't show up for a while, so as I got a little older, I would start the classes. And we would open with prayer and reading the Bible, and then we would start classes, and by that time she usually arrived. And always went to church every Sunday. My grandmother would always, on a Saturday night, she would teach me my Sunday school lesson, and then on Sunday morning, my father would come and take us to church and Sunday school. In the afternoon it was pretty quiet, not much to do, but by evening the relatives started to show up, and then we would have dinner together. And then after a while they would go back to town, which was probably, like I say, maybe 10, 12 miles from where I was born and raised. I had a very nice childhood. I remember going back on the farm. I liked all the animals. We had everything going from ducks to chickens to horses to cows to calves. We had all different kinds of animals on the farm. And I had always had a lot of company because we had a large not only our own, we had our own family, and then we had relatives who would always come. Usually every weekend I had family come. In order to get in high school out where I lived, you had to pass a county examination. And if you didn't pass that examination, then you didn't get into high school until you passed it. So there was no way to go to high school unless you could keep your grades up. That is the way it was until I went to high school 4 years, and that's the way it was until then I went to business college for a while. I didn't go the whole way through. I went to just a few months, and then I got a chance to go to work. So I had taken my mother to a doctor, and the doctor must have liked my appearance or something. Anyway, he said, "Are you interested in a job?" And I said, "Well, yes, I am." And he said, "Well, how about coming to work for me?" So I got a job, and I worked for this doctor. He was an internist, and I worked for him for 5 years. And then from then on, I got another job, and I worked outside of Pittsburgh, and it was for the Aluminum Cooking Utensil Company, and that is the home, New Kensington is the home plant of where aluminum pots and pans were made. If you see on the bottom of your pots and pans, you will see wherever. And that is, they were made in Pittsburgh, or outside of Pittsburgh in New Kensington. And I worked there in the office, in the wherever building, and I ran a bookkeeping machine. You had to go to Pittsburgh to learn that machine. And I worked there for 3 years, almost 4, until I got married. Then I got married in 1951, and my husband then would be studying to be a resident. That would be 1952 he started. He had 1 year as intern, and then he had 3 years of residency. But in the middle of his residency, he was taken into the service. So we hadn't really started any family or got established too much in Sayre. Now then we had a furnished apartment on Chemung Street in Sayre. And then I would just, whenever he was taken to the service, since we didn't have any furniture or anything, I moved back home with my parents. And so from there, I lived with them for 2 years while he was taken overseas. So then he came back in 2 years. He had finished his call with the service, and he was in the Air Force. And he was stationed in Germany and France. And like I say, I didn't see him for 2 whole years. And that was quite a trauma. And then whenever he come home, he went back into residency at Robert Packer Hospital, the Guthrie Clinic in Sayre. and he finished his residency, and then he was taken on as an associate. So then he was later on put on the staff, permanent staff, and he became an orthopedic surgeon. And during that time, I became very busy with, I had one child at that time, and then he went into, they sent him to Chicago to something that he he needed, but they didn't have it here. So we went to Chicago for 6 months, and I had at that time, my oldest child, Maid, was, I think he was about 14 months old whenever I moved to Chicago, and we were there for 20 months. And after 20 months, we come back, and then I really got involved in doing volunteer work at the hospital. I was very much involved with my church, and I was president of the hospital auxiliary. I was president of the medical auxiliary, and we had all sorts of fun-making projects, and I was always involved in something, but I never worked on for a salary after I got married. My husband was very much involved, and he thought that if I raised a couple children, that would be sufficient for me, and that suited me just fine, because I really enjoyed being a mother and doing the things that mothers did then. Now, I realize a lot of the mothers have to work now, but then you could get along pretty well. My husband and I started to go together whenever we were probably, I wasn't really allowed to date. I was probably maybe 16 before I got to date any, and then my father didn't like that very well, and I was too young. But anyway, I remember the first day that my husband later, he had brought me home from school, and I walked in the front door, and my mother said to me, "How did you get home?" And I said, "Well, Meade brought me, and you weren't supposed to do that." I said, "Yes, I realized I wasn't supposed to do that, but I did anyway." So that's how I got to know my husband, and it was in high school. And so we went together then and the whole way through till he was, we graduated and everything. The same day we graduated from high school, and then he went off to Mercersburg Academy for a year, and all the time I was at home. And then then he went to college, and so then on, I just kept going with him until he was a doctor. Oh my, Sarah's changed a lot since we came here. Not only the hospital, you wouldn't even recognize it. I have to find my way around up there even. But Sarah really, we used to have a nice downtown Sarah. We had, let me see, I can think of 3 dress stores we had down street. We had, two on Desmond Street and one on Lockhart. We had two or three, maybe two anyway, maybe 3 shoe stores. We had Grant's. We had, let me see where we had Grant's, and we have Newberry's. That took in the whole corner there. And we had a lot of little stores too. Bolish's hardware store was here. It's no longer here. It was, when Walmart came in, we lost a lot of stores. We used to have Rockman's, and now they have moved out of West Lockhart Street, so, it's hard to find nice clothes here. You have to go out of town to find them. One of the malls. Melissa was very much involved in school, and she played the sax in school, so she was on the stage band, the marching band, there was another band. Three different things she was involved where she played the sax. And me, he was, the boys, both my kids were in Scouts. And Melissa, she had to quit Scouts because there was no leader. But she had got quite a few badges, and he stayed with it all the way up until he got his Eagle, and they had a good time. And Scouts was very much involved whenever our kids were growing up. We didn't have soccer. and very little baseball. We had the kids' little baseball, but it didn't get too involved. But the kids were busy all the time, and they were in Sunday school. They were in choir. They had about 20 students that sang in the choir in church. And we had one woman that was very interested, so once a week they had practice. They had their own little robes and everything. And I still have the picture of them with their little robes on. They looked so adorable. And both of them, they were in the same picture. We had a very active Sunday school. We had that separate, and that was separate. That was first, and then came church. Now, if you go, most of the churches, Sunday school is during church because we couldn't get them to do both. As far as church is concerned, I was brought up to attend church and Sunday school, as were my children and also my grandchildren. They will tell you that they were brought up to go to Sunday school and church. And I know sometimes it's a headache, but really the children need that in their early years to get used to a routine, because once you get out of the routine of going to church, it's just it's a habit. You can get a habit to be good or bad, and I think that it can be a habit to go to church just as well as staying home. I think the children should get involved in Sunday school as early as they can, because you'd be amazed at what they take in when they're for 4, 5, 6 and on up, what they learn in Sunday school, that it really is a background of what kind of a person they might become as they grow older. We don't sing very many of the old hymns anymore in church. Some of them I don't recognize. This is truth, you don't. And they have the printing on the walls now. They have whatever they call that. I can't see it. I can if I get up close enough, but I can't see it from way back. And a couple weeks ago, they put one up, and they had it looked like trees was in front of the printing. Well, I got the hymn out, and I could sing from the hymn, but I couldn't sing up there because of those trees. And I mentioned it to some woman, and she said, Betty, those weren't trees. She said, those were clouds. I said, really? To me, they look like trees.